Kalau dibilang indah apa enggak, jelas enggak indah, tapi dia potong sendiri disusul gitu. Biasanya orang yang sehat itu harus pamer di Instagram ya. Lebih semangat ada pujian dia berkurang 1 kilo.
Channel dia pun kayak PG gitu nggak sih? Karena dia
Good afternoon, participants, and welcome to our Power Talk session on this Friday, 22 of April, 2022. The session today is brought to you by Pharmacy Department of Indonesian International Institute of Life Sciences. For today, we will discuss about development of pharmaceutical versus food supplement and the regulatory framework with our speaker, Mr. Bhanu Teja. So this is today's agenda. After 5 minutes of opening, we will have 40 minutes of presentation from Mr. Bhanu, continued by 10 minutes of Q&A, and the last 5 minutes of closing, in which participants may fill the evaluation form. The link and QR code will be shared at the end of our talk. So the code of conduct. Attendees are prohibited to activate audio during the Power Talk session. Attendees are allowed to use chat feature to ask questions, and evaluation surveys will be shared to Power Talk attendees at the end of the event. This survey is also used to record attendees' presence. So, Mr. Bhanu Teja Surikutchi recently works on the development of polymer-coated lipid nanoparticles and a novel hydrogel for controlled local drug delivery. And he has been working with diverse dosage forms such as biodegradable lipidic nanoparticle hydrogels, microspheres, tablets, and topicals. He has finished his Ph.D. in Pharmaceutical from the University of Nottingham and his Master in Pharmaceutics from the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research in India. His Bachelor of Pharmacy from the Pharmaceutical Science, BSN, Pharmaceuticals in India. And one of his recent publications is Novel Low Molecular Weight Nanocomposite Hydrogel Formulation for Intra-Tumor Delivery of Anti-Cancer Drug. Without further ado, please welcome Mr. Bhanu Teja.
Hey, hello all. Olung, am I okay to start our presentation?
Yes, it's okay to start.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank Olung for considering me for this power talk and inviting me to share my thoughts and knowledge, what I've acquired in my career during working in a pharmaceutical industry and in academia. I'm happy to share what I've learned over a period of probably 10 years in the field. So the presentation today, I'll go through the presentation, and as your standard template, you are welcome to ask your questions at the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer those. Thank you. I'll start with sharing my screen. Can you? Sorry. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
As you know already, the title of today's talk is on development of pharmaceuticals versus food supplements and their regulatory framework. So, which means in this talk, I'm going to talk about how pharmaceuticals are developed in the industry and how food supplements are developed. And after the development, how do we take the regulatory approval before we put the products in the market so that the consumers can use it. So two parts, one on the development side, another on the regulatory side of both of the formulations. So I'll give a brief introduction of my background. I know Willing has kindly given me given a presentation, a nice cordial presentation about my background. So I will quickly run through it a bit more detail. So I was born in India, in the southeast part of India called Tenali, which is close to the coast. And then I was born and brought up, and I did my schooling, higher education until bachelor's of pharmacy there in my hometown, which I finished in 2011. After that, I moved to the north of India to a place called Chandigarh, where I did my master's. This is in an institute called National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, which is considered to be the topmost research institute in India for pharmaceutical sciences. So that's where I did my master's in pharmacy, to be specific, pharmaceutics, which I completed in 2013. Then I moved further down south again to a city called Hyderabad, which is again in the south central part of India, where I worked as a formulation scientist for a renowned pharmaceutical company called Dr. Reddy's Laboratories Limited. Where I was working mostly on development of topical formulations, which means prescription creams, ointments, lotions, etc. And at the same time, I got my part-time education in Masters in Business Administration. That was the first time I got exposed to the business from academia. Then after that, I decided to do a PhD, wherein I acquired a fellowship by a program called NanoPhar, which is a European doctorate in nanomedicine and pharmaceutical innovation, which drove me to move from India to Europe, where I started working as a PhD student in a place called Santiago de Compostela, Spain, and then moved to University of Nottingham, UK, which was a part of my PhD fellowship, where I finished my my PhD, and then moved to a city called Derby, where I've been working with a company called Nutrivitality. So Nutrivitality is a nutritional, liquid nutritional supplement manufacturer, and I've been working with this company for around 2.5 years as a head of R&D. At the moment, we are a team of 7 people, a nutritionist and 6 formulation scientists, developing liquid nutritional supplements for various regions in the world. We do in the UK, and also we do some in Vietnam, some in Far Europe as well, Far East Europe as well. So that's the background. To give you a bit more about what Nutrivitality does, so as you can see in this video, I know audio is not great, you can't hear audio, but as you can see, the focus of the work is at Nutrivitality is developing liquid nutritional supplements. And this video shows how tablets are inefficient because of the challenges in dissolution and distribution. That means the tablets have to dissolve before it gets into blood circulation, whereas liquid nutritional supplements, so we do something like this, sachets, where and also liposomes, which are kind of phospholipid bilayers, which are like vesicles, as you can see here, which can entrap molecules, active molecules that can be diluted in water, and which will enhance the absorption. So this is what Nutrivitality does, and this is what our team develops. I know I'm not touching in depth here because that's not the aim of this presentation, but just wanted to give you a glimpse of what we do in our daily lives working here in the company. So these are typical products that we normally work. For example, you can see here we do sachets in a liquid form so people can drink it. And these are again nutritional supplements where some of them are standard vitamins and some of them are things like collagen, which is a peptide from fish, especially sea fish. That is used to supplement things like joint care and skin care, etc. People with some acute conditions. So that's what we do. And again, we start from formulation development, followed by sourcing of the ingredients, manufacturing, packaging, and distribution. We are a team of people. We presented our work in a conference in Geneva last year. So there's a picture from there. So then coming to the actual topic of today, pharmaceuticals versus nutraceuticals. So I've randomly put 4 different products in front of you. So just to give you how similar they are, at the same time how different they are. So I wanted to emphasize that perspective. So as you can see here, some of them are pharmaceuticals and some of them are nutraceuticals, but they are quite overlapping. So the one on the left two are pharmaceuticals, esomeprazole tablets, which is basically used as a proton pump inhibitor for acidity, which is especially for chronic use in patients with some gastrointestinal disorders. And then codeine, which is a cough supplement, cough syrup. Again, these two are prescription products. But the one on the right, on the right side, the 2 products, so which are vitamin D3 and K2 and zinc. So these 2 products are supplements. They are not classed as pharmaceuticals. And what's the key difference between them? So we will see. So pharmaceuticals are therapeutics. They're used as therapeutics or diagnostics, meaning that they are used for either treatment or diagnosis of a certain disease. And they're used in disease management. That means you use pharmaceuticals only if someone has been diagnosed with certain illness, right? And pharmaceuticals, they're used both in acute care and chronic care. That means acute care is something when the patient is severely feeling illness, which could start immediately, and the pain, for example, pain goes to its peak within a matter of few minutes. And chronic care is for example, diabetes, where a patient suffers it over a long period of time and it requires long-term care. So and pharmaceuticals are really good for both of these scenarios. Then pharmaceuticals are always prescription driven, but of course there are exceptions, which are OTCs, over-the-counter medicines, which are less toxic and which are open to consume. You can buy them without prescription, but they are exclusively for, as I said, for disease management. And they are strictly regulated as well. So for any pharmaceutical product to go into the market, it has to go through a stringent regulatory process before it reaches the market, which we will discuss further in the next slides. And from business perspective, they are really expensive to discover and produce. Just to give you a perspective, development of a pharmaceutical molecule, like a new molecule, with the current robotics in place, it takes around 12 years on an average to develop a new pharmaceutical molecule. And millions of dollars of investment goes into development of one new molecule. And you've got to invest it for a period of 12 years. That means it's a long term before you get your returns back on the investment. In contrast, nutraceuticals, so they are used for supplementation of key nutrients and micronutrients. That means for consumption of this, the consumer does not need to be a patient. A healthy person can take supplements to maintain their health, and also they are used in disease prevention or delaying the onset of a disease rather than uh, disease management. That means you take supplements before you actually get the disease, so that you'd like to either prevent the occurrence of a disease or you delay the onset of the disease, because sometimes people are genetically compromised to get some diseases which unfortunately we can't avoid, but we can delay it by taking some supplements. It is all about lifestyle management. With the modernization and globalization, most of the diseases that are coming in the modern era are lifestyle diseases rather than infectious diseases, which happened in 20th century. But now in 21st century, diseases, more pathetic diseases are around lifestyle, and supplements are a great way to do lifestyle management. Then, as I said, pharmaceuticals are prescription driven, whereas nutraceuticals are consumer awareness driven. So that means, so someone goes and buys nutraceuticals and use them if they are aware of what benefits they would give, and if they are aware of what benefits you might lack if you don't consume them. So it all depends on consumer awareness. So in comparison to the pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals are loosely regulated because they are classed as highly safe molecules. So consumption, a bit of overconsumption is not going to cause a huge public health issue. So hence why governments and ministries are less focused on regulating nutraceuticals in comparison to the level of regulation which is there on pharmaceuticals. And they are relatively cheap to formulate and produce. They do not take years and years of investment and time as with pharmaceuticals, where you spend, as I said, 12 years on an average, whereas in nutraceuticals, you can do it in months' time. So that's how both of them are different from an overall perspective. So because it's a short term, so you could expect your returns from the business perspective in a short period of time. And then if you look at the regulatory framework between pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals, so pharmaceuticals are typically managed by so regulatory authorities like, as you can see on the screen, US FDA, MHRA, CDEXCO, and NDFC. I did a bit of research about the regulatory body in Indonesia, so that I put this so you guys will be familiar with that. So that's about pharmaceutical regulatory bodies. Of course, they are country specific, so different governments will have different own bodies. So whenever you want to launch a product in that specific country, you've got to get a regulatory clearance from the respective drug control authority. And it is mandatory to produce pharmaceuticals in a GMP, which is a good manufacturing practice environment. So these are global standards, which is like ISO. That means, so there are set of rules in different categories that your manufacturing unit has to meet in various criteria in order to produce pharmaceuticals, which are fixed standards followed by all standard global authorities. So you need to have that. At the same time, regulatory approval is mandatory for product launch. Even if you are doing generic products, not absolutely new molecules, regulatory approval is mandate before your product goes into a pharmacy. Then regulatory dossiers. Dossiers are basically a file or a big folder of documents that you submit to the ministry. So this is exhaustive with product-specific toxicity and efficacy data. So from, say, for example, you've got a pharmaceutical molecule where it is well known. Say, for example, esomeprazole, we take the same example. So it is available in a tablet form. So if you would like, in a capsule form, if you would like to produce exactly the same thing, then you still have to provide a product specific toxicity data if you are changing anything around the formulations. At the same time, you still have to generate some efficacy data in animals to demonstrate its efficacy. So all these studies are absolutely must when you do your regulatory submission. So, and you focus on product specific safety. As I said, it doesn't need to be the molecule specific. So it has to be product specific. The difference is molecule is esomeprazole itself, whereas product is esomeprazole plus excipients that you use, like fillers, binders that you use to make tablets or capsules. So that's the product, and esomeprazole itself is a molecule. So when you are asking for approval of pharmaceuticals, you have to demonstrate your studies on the finished product, but not on the molecule itself. So that's in contrast to nutraceuticals, where the regulators for nutraceuticals are food regulators because they are classed as food supplements in some countries. So say, for example, in the UK where I'm working, so it is regulated by an agency called Food Standards Authority, FSA, and pharmaceuticals are regulated by MHRA, which is a medicines and healthcare regulatory medicines and healthcare products regulatory authority. It is different in different countries. Say, for example, in US, so they have got a common body, which is for food and drugs together, which is Food and Drug Administration. So yeah, as it is country specific. So although it sounds that the nutraceuticals are less regulated, but still manufacturing of nutraceuticals has to happen in the GMP environment. And the regulatory approval might not be required for the product launch. So because some countries consider them as a consumer goods, so all you need to do is to ensure that the molecule you are using in your product has got prior approval, so that you can link the safety data of your product to someone who has generated it before you. You can just refer that and launch your product into the market. So the regulatory dossiers, again, the documents that you submit, contains data related to general scientific understanding of the molecule, but it is not product specific, which happens with pharmaceuticals, but not with nutraceuticals. So you focus on the ingredient specific safety. So as I said again, you are focusing on the specific, the safety of the molecule specifically, but not the safety of the entire product itself. If you look at the pharmaceutical product development, so the first phase includes 3 subphases, as you can see on the screen: target identification, lead optimization, and lead selection. So this is about new molecule development. So you start from your blank completely, right from your chemical structures. You start with, say, for example, 10,000 molecules, and you would end up with 1 molecule by the end of your development. So all those optimizations happen at this stage, which is generally computer-based models where you do different permutations and combinations of your potential molecules, where pharmacologists, biochemists, and simulatory or modeling experts get involved. Then it is followed by wet lab synthesis, means synthesis of actual chemical molecule in the lab, followed by characterization, where chemists, organic, inorganic, analytical, and characterization experts, all these chemists and scientists are involved at this stage, followed by formulation development, where formulation scientists are involved, who makes these molecules into something that is consumable. Say, for example, converting those molecules into tablets or capsules or liquids, for example. So these kind of formulations are developed at this stage, which is followed by in vivo analysis in animal models, where again, pharmacologists, toxicologists, preclinical experts, veterinarians, so those are all involved at this stage, which is then followed by clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. There's a phase 4 after the market launch. So doctors, pharmacologists, and clinical pharmacists generally are involved at this stage of development. So as you can see,
Okay.
as you can see, it's a long development process, which is a 12, as I said, 12-year on an average long process, and it's a lot of money going into different phases of development. Then after this, if you look at nutraceutical product development, it looks fairly simple than pharmaceuticals, as I said, because it is less investment goes and less time period. So you start with your nutritional indication. So so you say, for example, you think that I would like to bring in some healthcare product or a nutritional supplement for a pregnant woman, for example. So that's the nutrition indication. You select that, and then you would normally the regulatory bodies have got a list of actives which they would authorize to allow your active to be used in specific indication. So then you look for already approved list of actives, and then you do your formulation development. Then you will start your in vitro testing on your formulations, and then you submit for regulatory approval, followed by a market launch. However, if your molecule is absolutely novel, if your active is absolutely novel that no one has ever used it, so it will not be on the list of authorized molecules. So in that scenario, you will have to do toxicity studies on the molecule, followed by dose finding and efficacy studies. Because this is a new molecule, no one knows how much to use. So you need to do dose finding and efficacy studies at this stage, followed by clinical trials, safety and efficacy. And then you've got to submit a different regulatory dossier, something called novel food authorization, where you submit all your data, which you have generated on the new molecule, to the regulatory body, and then they would authorize it. Once that is authorized, then it will go into the authorized molecules register. And then people who come after you can use them. So that's the key differences between nutraceutical and pharmaceutical product development. Then after this, let's see into key differences in terms of how much amount of data that goes into a regulatory dossier. So for so irrespective of whether you're developing a pharmaceutical or whether you're developing a nutraceuticals, the basics of developing it are same. The basis of science is same. So there are key elements on it. The first thing starts with chemistry, followed by formulation, manufacturing, preclinical studies, and clinical studies. Because you are supplementing or you are providing your drug to a human, you need to ensure at different stages that the product you are developing is safe to consume and it is efficacious to consume. That means it is serving the purpose for which it is meant to be designed. So chemistry, for example, so at this stage, you work on various chemical moieties and try to find out if it is a synthetic molecule, of course, try to find out what would be the best possible chemistry to find out that the molecule with this chemistry will be able to elicit the desired efficacy, desired response. It could be a therapeutic response or it could be a nutritional benefit. So you work out on your chemistry, which include, as I said in the previous slides, which include identification and optimization of different molecules. Then once the chemistry part is done, then you would go on to formulation part, where you develop with, you start with something called pre-formulation studies, where you try to understand how the molecule behaves. So because the human body is rich in water, at the same time is rich in lipid, rich in fat. So you would like to have a molecule which is water soluble, and also to some extent it is lipid soluble, means fat soluble. So it is getting a molecule with the right balance. So in the formulation development, in the first stage, you will try to understand how much is the water solubility, how much is the fat solubility. Once you establish that data, then you further go into developing next stage, where you'll find out what other excipients you would require to make a formulation that can be consumed. Most of these molecules are extremely bitter to consume, so you would have non-compliance to especially um, in the pediatric patients, for example. So in that case, you need to find excipients which can deliver in an effective way, of deliver the molecule of interest in an effective way. So all this process happens in the formulation development. At the same time, you would also establish a stability study where you would demonstrate how the formulation you have developed stays over a period of time. Say, for example, the molecule gets manufactured today and it gets shipped to the pharmacy in your local region in a week time, and it stays in the pharmacy until the consumer uses it. So that means you would expect some shelf life on the product. And in order to ensure the shelf life, you need to do some stability studies to demonstrate that the product you have developed is stable over a period of time. So this part also comes under formulation development. Once that is done, then you demonstrate that it is scalable. It can be manufactured in the large scale so that you can serve a huge amount of population. So that's the manufacturing side that you have to demonstrate. And after that, so it's not actually after that, it's in parallel, it happens. After the formulation development, then people also do preclinical studies where you test your formulation in rats, mice, rabbits. So whichever is the suitable animal model. So you would like to test it in animals. To start with, a toxicity study where you would like to find out if the molecule, if the product is causing any sort of damage in terms of its physiology and anatomy of the animal. And then after that, once the safety toxicity is established, then they establish the safety, where you would then find out what is the optimum dose to elicit the desired response. So that's the that's the safety study. So establish the safe dose for consumption, and then you would do an efficacy study where the dose that you are demonstrated will be used for determining if the desire will be used in a diseased models. That means you induce a disease to the animal deliberately and then provide this this desired dose of the active to give to find out if the active is able to if the active is able to demonstrate efficacy against that disease. So that's all preclinical studies. Once you are confident that the molecule is not toxic, is safe enough, and if it is efficacious, then at this stage you go and tell your regulators that, yeah, I've done all these studies, it is doable. Now I want your permission to start a clinical study. They review all this data and then give a green signal to test this product in humans. So which is a clinical trial. As I said in the previous slide, it happens in different phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. As you move further to the phases, you start with small amount of volunteers, so probably 10-20 volunteers in the phase 1, and then increase it to a couple of hundred in phase 2, and then some thousands in phase 3. So that's the clinical trial scale. So after the clinical trial, if everything is successful, you can launch the product with confidence. But this is, as I said, development of a medicine, of a pharmaceutical. So now we will look into how each of these pieces of information, each of these pieces of data is required to submit a regulatory dossier. New drug products, for example, as I said, absolutely new molecules, you have to do something called INDA, which is investigational new drug application. Again, these terms are different in different countries. So, but the core, the essence of it is same. So in the investigational new drug application, you have to submit chemistry related information, formulation related information, and preclinical studies. So once this piece of information is generated, all of it gets stitched together and gets submitted as INDA. And further to that, so once that is done, then the regulators keep on reviewing it. In the background, you can start working on manufacturing, establishing the manufacturing, and establishing the clinical trials data. So once that is getting developed, you can update the dossier that you have submitted to the regulatory authority with the data that you are generating with time. Then it is followed by a new drug application, which is the final package that you give it to the regulatory authority to say that, yeah, here you go. This is my data. This is the new product. I would like to submit for your review so that you review it, give me an approval, and I could launch the product in the market. So that's a new product development. And then generic drug products are fairly simple. They do not require exhaustive studies as you do with the new drug products. Generics, so just to define, they are the products which have been invented by someone already in the past, and the inventors normally get a market exclusivity for a certain period of time. That means no one else can make that product and sell that product during that period of time. This is to acknowledge the hard work that they have put in developing a new drug product. So, and after the market exclusivity, anyone who is interested in developing the product can develop it and launch it in the market. And that those kind of products that come later after the innovator are called generic products. And taking a generic drug product approval, regulatory approval, is fairly simple than a new drug approval. So in this case, you still need to do some chemistry where you have to demonstrate the molecule that you have developed is similar to the molecule that has been generated before by the innovator company or innovator, whoever is the innovator. So that chemistry needs to be matched. And then you develop the formulation, which should be theoretically performing in the same way as the innovator. It can be different in terms of the ingredients that you use, but again, the performance of the formulation should be similar to what the innovator is using. So to demonstrate that, people do something called bioequivalence studies, which are a part of it is in vitro studies, where you do something like a dissolution in the lab to compare what the innovator product is doing and what your product is doing. And then after you are confident in the lab, then you go into animal studies, where you give both the products to different animals and compare how is it behaving in two different animals. So you would look for the profile of the molecule in the blood and how it is getting cleared from the animal through urine or through feces or whatever. So basically the residence of the molecule in an animal from ingestion from ingestion to excretion. So you compare that profile of an innovator molecule, and you compare exactly the same profile for your generic drug product. Then you try to match. So then you demonstrate to your regulatory authority that, yeah, my product matches with what innovator has done. So can you please give me an approval for a market launch? So that's the generic drug product. So for novel supplements, as I said before, novel food application. So it is close to the new drug products, where you have to demonstrate the chemistry of the molecule, and then followed by how you develop the formulation. And in this case, you still you have to also demonstrate something called history of use, because our human history is so long. We have been on this earth for thousands and thousands of years. So we consume some of these supplements before, like our ancestors have consumed some of these supplements which we might not know at this stage. So that's the history of use. So if you can find any such piece of information, it would be a great benefit to demonstrate that something you have developed as a novel food is safe to use. Why this is different to new drug product is because new drug products are controlled by prescription. You can only buy them if the doctor prescribes it, whereas novel supplements, you don't, I mean, the doctor do not prescribe them. You can go to the shop and buy them free of use. So the regulators have to be absolutely clear on the safety data, on the toxicity of the product before it goes into the market, because you do not have a control of how much to consume from the consumer end, and you do not have a control of who can consume. So everything in the market has to be absolutely safe. So that's why they ask you to demonstrate the history of the use if it is an absolutely new molecule. And then, as like drug products, you still have to demonstrate a preclinical toxicity study and dose escalation studies where you find what is the right dose for your active. And then you still have to demonstrate clinical trials, safety and efficacy.
Disuruh sama sang ibu.
If you think of conventional supplements, so you still have to do a chemistry and formulation side of it, but you do not need to demonstrate preclinical studies because you are working on the molecule which is on the list of approved molecules. So you can straightforward refer your molecule to that and say that, yeah, because a lot of data has already been established on this, and it is generally regarded as safe over a period of how many years it has been in, and people have been using it as a food supplement for so long. So you can back up your regulatory submission by referring your product to what's existing out there. So that's how the conventional supplements work. So that is the aim of this slide, where I would like to emphasize on pharmaceuticals and supplements. Again, within pharmaceuticals and supplements, how different categories of products are being treated from a regulatory perspective in terms of the data you generate before you reach the point of submission. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much from the slide. I didn't want to stretch too long the presentation, so I wanted to be consistent to the topic. So yeah, I'm open to questions. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Bhanu, for the presentation. Now we have the Q&A session, so you can type your question in the chat feature.
So I got a question here. I'm curious on Nutrivitality products, since they are supplements encapsulated in nanoparticles, is there any additional data needed for nanoparticles usually? Yeah, thanks, Uling, for asking that. So in general, I would like to say that the awareness of regulators on nanoparticles is not at reach to the level as they have got in pharmaceutical products. They so the awareness, as I said, because there is not much awareness on it, you could still get on with referring your product safety to something else in the market. Say, for example, liposomal vitamin C. People have done it in I think before 1980s. So you could refer your data there. And also, because there are claims that you would put with nanoparticles, if it is liposomes, most generally it is liposomes. It is only liposomes that is there in the supplement business at the moment. No other nanoparticles have been touched. So if you talk about liposomes, so you still have to demonstrate, the basics of formulation thing, like encapsulation efficiencies, and it's demonstrating its microscopic images like TEM images, etc., to demonstrate that your particles have actually been formed. And then you will have to demonstrate in vitro release studies to see how it is different from standard formulations. And that's about it. You don't have to demonstrate any toxicity data, because the very typical molecule, lecithin or phosphatidylcholine, that is used for developing liposomes, that is well known to be safe in the food industry. So it is used in various food products. So they're not bothered about us demonstrating product specific toxicity data for liposomal formulations. I guess I answered your question. Thank you. So there's another question, which is, are there any challenges unique to nutraceutical trials? Yeah, there are a few challenges which are different to pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals, start with pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are basically, the molecules, you standardize them quite well. That means, so most of the molecules are synthetic molecules. Of course, there are a few natural ones, but there are synthetic molecules. That means you can achieve 99.99% purity in your molecule. Whereas nutraceuticals, some of them are herbal products. With the herbal products, it is a bit tricky, because herbal products, because you're extracting them from plant, so the plants naturally, they show different chemical composition depending upon the season you are picking it. So say for example, if you're taking flower buds from a plant, so the molecules, the composition of flower petals, for example, is different if you are picking in autumn to if you are picking in spring. So it is dependent, seasonal dependent. At the same time, it is geographical dependent as well. So if you are, it is different in Asia to Europe to US. So depending on the geography, even if it belongs to the same species, the chemical composition could be different. So what it means is there is a higher amount of variation when you are testing your nutraceuticals in a clinical study or in a preclinical study. So you've got to account for that variation when you're demonstrating either the toxicity or safety. So that means you might have to take larger amount of volunteers or animals than what you demonstrate for pharmaceuticals. But as the regulations are not as scrutinized as in pharmaceuticals, so you could get on with 2 studies here, whereas in pharmaceuticals, you might have to do 10 different studies. So you would do a balance there. So the investment is still lower on the nutraceutical side, whereas the pharmaceuticals, again, because of the level of detail that they go into toxicity, you still have to struggle a lot to demonstrate that. Whereas in nutraceuticals, a couple of studies with more number of animals could demonstrate what you're looking for. Is that clear? Thank you. So there's another question from Fandi. Is there a strict purity requirement for synthetic molecule to be accepted for further development? You mentioned 99.9% is achievable, but we all know that's not always easy to achieve. That's true. So there isn't one standard criteria for accepting any synthetic molecule. So it depends on product specific, again, and also manufacturing specific, because and also the complexity of chemistry involved in it. So if it is if it is a well-known chemical reaction, and so people have already done it for different molecules, but the same chemical reaction, you might achieve your efficiency of your process really well, because it has been used in different molecule, but the same chemical reaction or same manufacturing method. So you could literally adopt that. So you would get a good yield and you would get a good purity. But if you are using a novel chemical reaction that you found out from your magical brains, so then in that case, it requires time to establish, and you might not have that. Then you can demonstrate it to regulators, saying that, yeah, this is a new process, new new technique. So I am able to achieve only 70%. They would still acknowledge that. They will still give you a benefit, a credit to you, because you came up with new science. You could still do it, but then you have to demonstrate what that extra 30% is, if it is only 70% pure. And what in that 30%, again, you have to demonstrate what are those, like, are those molecules toxic? Is there any toxicity data established before? So it gets complicated if your molecule is less pure. So that's why you always try to achieve the best purity which is possible. But yeah, the answer is yes, it is possible to achieve to get on with lower purity, but you have to demonstrate what extra ingredients are there, and what toxicity they bring in. Yes, that's right. Yeah, you got it right. You got it right. You can take it if the other molecules are safe. You can consider that less pure compounds are fine. Any more questions?
Okay, maybe if there are any more questions, you guys can email me, and maybe I can talk to Mr. Bhanu, or maybe but for now it's as a form of appreciation, we from the pharmacy study program would like to present a certificate to Mr. Bhanu, to Teja. Thank you for presenting in our Power Talk session today, sir. I wish you good luck and lots of success in the future.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Bhanu. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, all audience, for listening to me, and I hope it has been useful. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much. And now for participants, you can fill in the evaluation form by scanning this QR code or accessing this link. Thank you for attending, and I hope all the points here today can be useful insight for your pharmacy knowledge.